For more than 5 centuries, the House of Yi occupied the center of Korean political life. Its kings ruled Joseon from 1392. Its court helped shape institutions and customs that still influence Korea, and its final rulers transformed their kingdom into the Korean Empire in 1897. Then, in 1910, Japanese annexation ended the dynasty's sovereignty. Palaces remained, royal tombs survived, and the names of kings continued to fill history books, but the family itself had to learn how to exist without a throne. That transformation makes the modern story more complicated than a search for one hidden prince. There are living descendants of the old royal house, but there is no legally recognized Korean crown waiting to be inherited. One family association recognizes Yi Hae-won as a successor within its own traditional framework. Other relatives have challenged that interpretation, while many descendants live as ordinary citizens and make no public claim at all. The important question is therefore not simply where an heir lives, but what heir can mean after monarchy, empire, occupation, division, and republican government. This documentary follows the dynasty from its final imperial years to the present, separating documented relationships from symbolic titles and private claims. It examines Yi Ku, the childless prince whose death created a succession dispute; Yi Won, the relative selected to continue a ceremonial line; Yi Seok, another prominent descendant with a different view; and the broader Jeonju Yi clan. Their story reveals that a dynasty can lose every instrument of government, yet remain visible through genealogy, ritual, architecture, and public memory. 1. Joseon was more than a royal surname. The dynasty began in 1392, when the military commander Yi Seok became King Taejo and established a new political order after the fall of Goryeo. Joseon would endure for roughly 5 centuries, an unusually long life for a ruling house. Its royal family belonged to the Jeonju Yi clan, but the clan was much larger than the narrow line of kings, crown princes, and palace relatives who stood near the throne. That distinction matters when discussing descendants today. A person may belong to the Jeonju Yi clan without descending from the most recent emperors, and a person may descend biologically from a king without occupying the senior place under a particular traditional succession rule. Genealogy, dynastic eligibility, family leadership, and legal sovereignty are separate categories. Popular videos often collapse them into the single word heir, creating an answer that sounds clear but is historically false. Joseon's state was deeply influenced by Neo-Confucian political and social thought. Royal legitimacy was expressed not only through bloodline, but also through education, court institutions, ancestral rights, official histories, and the performance of moral government. The monarch stood at the top of a structured order, yet his authority depended on ministers, bureaucratic examinations, local administration, and established ritual. The dynasty was therefore both a family and a governing system. Royal succession itself was not always a simple journey from father to eldest son. Death, deposition, political conflict, the absence of sons, and adoption within the extended lineage could redirect the line. Joseon history contains kings who were selected from collateral branches or recognized through forms of posthumous and ritual adoption. This background helps explain why modern family organizations could regard adoption as meaningful, even when a republican legal system did not treat it as a restoration of royalty. The dynasty also became a powerful container for Korean cultural memory. King Sejong's reign is associated with the creation and promulgation of Hangul, while court painting, architecture, music, scholarship, and record-keeping produced an enormous documentary inheritance. These achievements do not belong privately to living descendants. They form part of Korea's national and global heritage, preserved by public institutions as well as families. By the 19th century, however, the court faced severe internal and external pressures. Factional politics, social unrest, unequal treaties, competition among imperial powers, and Japan's growing influence weakened the monarchy's ability to act independently. The royal family remained symbolically central, but the geopolitical environment around it had changed faster than inherited institutions could manage. In 1897, King Gojong proclaimed the Korean Empire and assumed the title of emperor. The change asserted Korea's equality and independence in an international order dominated by empires. It also means that the family discussed in modern succession debates is often called both the Joseon Royal House and the Korean Imperial House. The labels refer to connected phases of the same ruling dynasty, but they are not chronologically identical. Understanding this long institutional history prevents the descendants from becoming mere celebrity curiosities. Their modern circumstances are the consequence of a state's destruction, not simply the fading of a famous surname. The survival of the family after 1910 raises a broader question. When political authority disappears, which parts of a dynasty remain? Blood, ceremony, property, public service, or collective memory? 2. The empire ended, but the family did not disappear. Japan's annexation of Korea in 1910 abolished the Korean Empire's sovereignty. The former imperial household was not immediately erased as a biological family, but its members were reorganized under the Japanese colonial order. Their ranks, residences, marriages, education, and finances became entangled with a system designed by the power that had absorbed their country. Emperor Sunjong, Gojong's son and the last reigning Korean emperor, remained a potent symbol until his death in 1926. He had no surviving children. That fact narrowed the direct succession and increased the importance of his half-brother Yi-un, also known as Crown Prince Yuimin, who had been designated Crown Prince in 1907. Yet succession after annexation could no longer confer Korean sovereignty because the sovereign state itself had been eliminated. Yi-un's life captured the contradictions imposed on the family. Taken to Japan as a child, educated there and incorporated into Japanese imperial structures, he married Princess Masako of Nashimoto, who later became known in Korea as Yi Bangja. Their marriage has sometimes been reduced to romance or betrayal, but it was also inseparable from colonial policy and the political management of a conquered royal house. The couple's first son, Yi Jin, died in infancy. Their second son, Yi Ku, was born in Tokyo in 1931. In a world without annexation, he might have occupied a formal place in an independent Korean succession. In the world that actually existed, he inherited a family history whose legal and political foundation had already been removed. Other branches survived through Gojong's children, especially Prince Yi Kang, often known by his title Prince Imperial Ui. Yi Kang had numerous children, and several later public claimants descended from his branch. This is one reason the phrase, "the royal family died out," is inaccurate. A narrow senior male line faced extinction, but the extended biological family did not. After Japan's defeat in 1945, Korea was liberated but divided. The Republic of Korea was established in the south in 1948, while a separate state emerged in the north. Neither state restored the monarchy. For former royals, liberation did not mean a return to the political or financial world that had existed before annexation. The South Korean constitutional order placed citizenship and equality before inherited privilege. Article 11 states that no privileged caste shall be recognized or established. In legal terms, a modern descendant of the House of Yi is a citizen, not a prince with constitutional authority. Family titles may appear in historical, ceremonial, or social contexts, but they do not create governmental powers. This separation between family survival and state extinction is the foundation of the modern story. The descendants did not vanish, yet the political mechanism that once made one relative an heir over millions of subjects no longer exists. Any present-day succession must therefore be described as traditional, organizational, genealogical, or symbolic, not as an office recognized by the Republic of Korea. 3. Yi Ku became the last figure in the senior direct line. Yi Ku grew up largely in Japan before traveling to the United States. He studied architecture at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, graduating in the 1950s, and worked professionally rather than being prepared to govern a kingdom. His education placed him among a generation of displaced royal descendants who had to build modern careers from identities once organized around court life. He married Julia Mullick, an American who worked in design. Their marriage attracted attention because it crossed cultural expectations surrounding the former imperial household. The couple did not have biological children. They later adopted a daughter personally, but that relationship did not become an uncontested continuation of the traditional dynastic line. Yi Ku returned to South Korea in the 1960s, during a period when surviving members of the former imperial family were gradually allowed back into the country. His return did not restore a palace government. It placed a man shaped by Japan and the United States inside a rapidly industrializing republic that regarded the monarchy as history. Public accounts describe professional and financial difficulties during his years in Korea. Eventually, he again spent substantial time in Japan. That trajectory is important because it undermines the fantasy that royal descent automatically produced wealth or privilege. The collapse of a dynasty can leave descendants with a famous identity, but little practical protection from the ordinary pressures of work, money, migration, and belonging. When Yi-un died in 1970, Yi Ku became the senior figure of his immediate family line in a traditional sense. Some later sources called him head of the House of Yi or the last crown prince. Such language should be read historically and ceremonially. He did not hold a state office, and South Korean law did not place him in a line to exercise sovereign power. Yi Ku died in Tokyo on July 16, 2005, without biological issue. His funeral in South Korea drew considerable public attention and was associated with memories of the former dynasty. Contemporary reporting sometimes described him as the last direct heir to the throne, a phrase that captured the end of the narrow line descending through Yi-un, but not the disappearance of every descendant of Gojong or the House of Yi. His death created a practical problem for relatives and organizations committed to maintaining ancestral observances. If the senior line had no son, who would occupy the ceremonial place connected with it? In a functioning monarchy, succession might be settled by a constitution, royal decree, parliament, court, or established house law. In a republic, there was no public authority responsible for deciding. The dispute that followed was therefore not a constitutional crisis for South Korea. It was a disagreement inside and around a former ruling family about genealogy, adoption, ritual legitimacy, and representation. Yi Koo can responsibly be called the last biological male of his immediate senior branch. Calling him the last descendant of Joseon, however, would erase many living relatives. 4. Why Yi Hae-won? Was selected by a family association. After Yi Koo's death, the Jeonju Royal Family Association recognized Yi Hae-won as his successor within the association's traditional framework. Yi Hae-won was born Yi Sang-hyop in 1962 and is a great-grandson of Emperor Gojong through Prince Yi Kang and Yi Gap. He was therefore already a biological member of a collateral branch before being selected to continue Yi Koo's line ceremonially. The association's position has been described as an adoption or designation. Under the family's traditional understanding, bringing a male relative from a collateral branch into a line without a son could maintain ancestral continuity. Such practices have precedence in Korean dynastic history, where lineage obligations and ritual descent could be as significant as simple biological proximity. Reports state that Yi Koo had considered Yi Hae-won, and that association representatives understood him to have approved the choice shortly before his death. The association formally announced Yi Hae-won as successor in July 2005, and later listed him in a leading dynastic role. This gives his position institutional support inside a major private organization connected with the Jeonju Yi clan. That support does not make the designation a decision of the South Korean government. The family association is not a royal court, parliament, or constitutional tribunal. Its recognition explains why Yi Hae-won is frequently presented at heritage events as a representative of the former imperial household, but it cannot create a legally privileged status prohibited by the Republican constitutional order. The timing and legal character of the adoption also generated objections. Critics argued that the process had not been completed before Yi Koo's death, or that other relatives had not consented. Modern civil law, historical house custom, and the internal rules of a family organization do not necessarily produce the same answer. A responsible documentary must attribute the association's conclusion rather than announce it as universally binding. Before assuming this public ceremonial identity, Yi Hae-won had pursued education and a corporate career. Public biographies associate him with studies in broadcasting in the United States and management work in South Korea. This is one of the most revealing features of the story. The man selected to continue an imperial line had already lived as a modern professional in a republic. Yi Hae-won's publicly documented role has centered on heritage, remembrance, and ritual rather than politics. The Jeonju Yi family organization has been involved in genealogical work and ancestral ceremonies, including the cultural world surrounding Jongmyo. He should therefore be described as a family or ceremonial successor recognized by that association, not as Korea's legal crown prince. As for where he lives, responsible reporting needs only a broad answer. He has been publicly associated with South Korea. A documentary gains nothing legitimate by repeating an apartment address, neighborhood routine, or other precise residential detail about a living person. His public significance lies in institutional and ceremonial activity, not in turning private location into a revelation. 5. Why the succession remained disputed. Yi Hae-won was not the only relative connected with a claim after 2005. Yi Hae-won, a daughter of Prince Yi Kang, and therefore a granddaughter of Emperor Gojong, was promoted by another group in a private ceremony in 2006. Her supporters used imperial language, while the Jeonju Royal Family Association rejected that move. She remained a symbolic claimant until her death in 2020. Her claim exposed a question larger than one personality. Should a former dynasty continue applying a male-centered traditional rule after the state that enforced it has disappeared? Advocates of older lineage practices could emphasize agnatic succession and adoption from a male branch. Others could argue that seniority or direct biological descent through a woman deserved recognition. With no sovereign law governing the house, there was no universally authoritative judge. Yi Seok, born in 1941, is another well-known descendant. He's a son of Prince Yi Kang, and thus a grandson of Gojong. Public reporting has described his cultural activities, lectures, media appearances, entrepreneurial work, in association with Jeonju. The ancestral home connected with the dynasty's founder, Yi Seok, objected to the way Yi Hae-won's succession was handled and presented a competing understanding of family legitimacy. Some media have called him a prince, claimant, or last surviving son of Prince Yi Kang. These terms describe genealogy or symbolic positioning. They do not give him a recognized public office under South Korean law. The rival claims demonstrate why videos should not ask only who is the rightful king of Korea. That question assumes the existence of a legal throne and a single accepted rule for filling it. Neither assumption reflects present reality. There are instead overlapping communities of recognition, family associations, supporters, journalists, heritage audiences, and individual relatives. The disagreement also shows that biological descendant and dynastic successor are not synonyms. Yi Hae-won is biologically descended from Gojong and is also treated as Yi Ku's successor by the Jeonju Lee Royal Family Association. Yi Seok is biologically closer to Gojong by generation, but advances a different claim. Yi Hae-won was also a direct granddaughter, yet faced a tradition that favored male line continuity. None of these positions changes the republican form of the South Korean state. A claimant cannot inherit taxation power, command public institutions, or obtain legal privilege through family recognition. The dispute operates in the realms of memory, ritual, identity, and private organization. That does not make it meaningless, but it defines the limits of what is being disputed. The most accurate conclusion is therefore deliberately modest. Yi Hae-won is a prominent ceremonial successor recognized by a major Jeonju Yi family association. Other relatives have contested or offered alternatives to that succession. There is no universally recognized legal heir to a Korean throne today because there is no throne within the constitutional structure of the Republic of Korea. 6. The wider family is much larger than the claimants. Focusing only on public claimants can produce another distortion. It makes the dynasty appear to consist of 3 or 4 famous individuals. The broader Jeonju Yi clan includes a very large population and many branches whose connection to the royal house may reach back centuries. Most members are not plausible successors to the final imperial line, and most do not organize their lives around royal identity. Even among closer descendants of 19th and 20th century royals, public visibility varies. Some have lived in South Korea, Japan, the United States, and other countries. Migration was shaped by colonial history, war, education, marriage, and employment, not by a coordinated royal strategy. The family's geography reflects modern Korean history more than it resembles a court in exile. Many descendants built careers far removed from monarchy. Architecture, corporate management, teaching, cultural promotion, arts, and ordinary private employment appear in public accounts of different relatives. These professions should not be framed as evidence that they fell from royal greatness. Paid work is the normal foundation of life in a modern society, and often reveals adaptability rather than humiliation. The family's experience also warns against estimating wealth from a surname. Palaces and royal tombs visible today are not simply private homes available to descendants. Many are protected heritage sites administered for the public. Historical association with an imperial family does not establish current ownership of state-managed cultural property or justify speculative claims about personal fortunes. Women's experiences are especially easy to overlook when a story is constructed around male succession. Princess Daeoki, the daughter of Gojong, endured separation, an arranged marriage in Japan, illness, and a late return to Korea. Yi Bangja became known for charitable work after returning. Their lives illuminate colonial pressure, gendered expectations, and service, even though traditional succession narratives placed them outside the central male line. Descendants who avoid publicity deserve the same privacy as other citizens. Being connected to a historical dynasty does not make a person's address, marriage, children, finances, or daily routine public property. Only information voluntarily disclosed and relevant to the historical subject should appear in a documentary. This broader view changes the emotional tone of the story. The descendants are not characters frozen in 1910, waiting for a crown to return. They are people who inherited different fragments of a complicated past. Some preserve ritual, some speak publicly, some dispute succession, and many simply live beyond the camera. The dynasty's biological survival is therefore not in serious doubt. What ended was its sovereignty and the universally enforceable rule that once ranked its branches. The modern family is plural, close descendants, distant clan members, ceremonial representatives, competing claimants, and private citizens all coexist under the same historical shadow. 7. From palace status to modern professions. The shift from court titles to professional careers is one of the clearest measures of political change. Yi Ku trained as an architect in the United States. Yi Hae-won worked in the corporate world before taking on a larger public role in family heritage. Yi Seok has been publicly associated with cultural promotion, teaching, performances, and business activities. Their work belongs in the story because it shows how royal identity was translated into republican life. For Yi Ku, architecture offered a modern identity that could travel across borders. He was not educated as a future sovereign in an independent Korean court. His training reflected the international world of the post-war era, yet his career and later difficulties also suggest how hard it was to reconcile professional life with the expectations attached to his family name. Yi Hae-won's corporate background similarly complicates the image of an heir. His later ceremonial role did not erase the fact that he had lived within South Korea's commercial economy. The contrast is historically meaningful. A lineage once supported by royal revenue now depended on individuals trained for salaried employment and organizational leadership. Yi Seok's public activity took another path. He used his proximity to Emperor Gojong as a platform for explaining royal history and promoting cultural memory, especially in Jeonju. That role can be understood as heritage interpretation. It is not the same as governing, and its authority depends on public interest rather than law. These careers also help make the documentary transformative rather than merely genealogical. A list of births and marriages tells us who belong to the family. Their working lives show what happened when hereditary status ceased to organize opportunity. Descendants had to acquire education, navigate institutions, and create public identities in societies that did not owe them obedience. Modern employment did not necessarily eliminate ceremonial responsibility. A person could be a manager or educator while also taking part in rites, family councils, or memorial events. This layering is common among descendants of former ruling houses. Private profession and inherited symbolism coexist without merging into political power. Audiences should resist two opposite myths. One says the descendants secretly retain immense power. The other says ordinary work proves their family was degraded. Neither is supported by the basic facts. Their lives instead show the normalization of a former elite, with uneven access to reputation, institutions, and public attention. In this sense, the ordinary lives of Joseon descendants are not an anticlimax. They are the conclusion of a profound political transformation. The movement from imperial household to citizen, employee, cultural advocate, or private individual is precisely what the end of monarchy looks like at the human level. 8. Where do the public descendants live today? The safest, accurate answer is broad. Prominent, publicly documented descendants have been associated mainly with South Korea, while the family's 20th century history also created branches and personal ties in Japan, the United States, and elsewhere. There is no single palace or exile court where every descendant gathers. Yi Hae-won's public activities place him in South Korea. Sources describing his family association and ceremonial roles connect him with the country's heritage institutions and commemorative life. A responsible account stops at the national or publicly relevant city level and does not convert a living person's home into a tourist destination. Yi Seok has been publicly associated with Jeonju and with efforts to present the city's connection to the founding of Joseon. Jeonju matters symbolically because it is the ancestral seat of the Jeonju Yi clan. His presence there therefore links personal descent with a place central to the dynasty's origin story. Yiku's life, by contrast, moved among Japan, the United States, and South Korea. He died in Tokyo in 2005 and was buried in South Korea near members of his family. His cross-border biography embodied the forced entanglement of Korean and Japanese history, followed by the educational and professional mobility of the post-war world. Other relatives and clan members live across a wide diaspora, yet a clan connection should not be used to label every person a royal heir. Korean lineage organizations can encompass many branches and generations. The existence of overseas offices or members demonstrates genealogical community, not an international government in exile. Geography also carries different meanings for different people. Living in Seoul may place a descendant near palaces, Jongmyo, archives, and family organizations. Living in Jeonju may emphasize ancestral origin. Living abroad may reflect colonial displacement, education, marriage, or opportunity. None of these locations alone establishes dynastic seniority. This is why the sensational version of the title, "Where is the Last Heir Hiding?" fails. Public descendants are not necessarily hidden, and revealing a precise residence would contribute little historical understanding. The real discovery is that the family has dispersed into the same transnational world inhabited by millions of other modern Koreans. Today, place matters most when it connects descendants to public history. Ceremonies in Seoul, cultural interpretation in Jeonju, burial sites and royal tomb complexes, and international research into diaspora lives. The documentary should map those public relationships, not private doorsteps. 9. Jongmyo shows how a dynasty survives as heritage. The clearest public continuity between the former royal family and modern Korea can be seen in the Jongmyo ancestral ritual. Jongmyo Shrine in Seoul houses memorial tablets associated with Joseon kings and queens. The ritual combines reverence, music, song, dance, costume, and carefully structured ceremonial roles. UNESCO describes the rite and its music as a significant form of intangible cultural heritage. The organization notes that the ceremony is held annually and organized by descendants of the royal family. This gives descendants a real and visible role, but the role is cultural and ritual, not executive or legislative. During the dynasty, royal ancestral rites expressed state legitimacy. The reigning king's participation connected living authority with the ancestors of the house. In the Republic, the same ritual can no longer mean exactly what it meant under monarchy. It has become heritage performed within a different political and social order. That change is not simple decline. Public preservation can broaden access to traditions once centered on an elite court. Music, architecture, documents, tombs, and ceremonies can be studied and experienced by citizens and international visitors. The dynasty's legacy is therefore redistributed through museums, heritage agencies, scholarship, performance, and tourism. Descendants contribute a distinctive form of continuity because ancestral identity is not merely theatrical for them. Yet they do not own the whole meaning of Joseon. Historians, musicians, conservators, ritual specialists, government agencies, and the public all participate in interpreting and preserving the past. Yi Hae-won's association with ceremonial representation is strongest when explained in this setting. His significance comes not from an imaginary power to rule Korea, but from recognition within a family organization that helps maintain ancestral obligations. That is a narrower claim, and also a more credible one. The annual rite illustrates how institutions can outlive the state that created them. Their function changes, their audience expands, and their authority becomes cultural. A royal ceremony once connected a monarch to sovereignty. Today, it connects a republic to a layered historical inheritance. Jongmyo therefore offers the best answer to what remains of the dynasty. Not a secret throne, but a public ritual. Not inherited government, but inherited responsibility. Not a single unquestioned heir, but descendants cooperating, sometimes amid disagreement, with institutions that preserve the memory of the royal past. 10. What the descendants reveal about modern Korea. The descendants of Joseon live inside a country whose global identity has been built largely after the monarchy ended. South Korea's industrialization, democratization, technological growth, and cultural influence belong to a republican era. The former royal family occupies a place in national history, but it does not define citizenship or political legitimacy. At the same time, modernity did not require Korea to abandon every dynastic inheritance. Palaces stand in central Seoul, royal tombs are protected, court records are studied, and ancestral music continues to be performed. The state can reject hereditary privilege while preserving the cultural achievements and historical evidence of a monarchy. The succession dispute after Yiku's death demonstrates the limits of bloodline without sovereignty. When there is no throne, no house law accepted by all parties, and no public court empowered to decide, the word heir becomes dependent on the speaker. A family association, a claimant, a historian, and a journalist may each be answering a different question. For the Jeonju Lee Royal Family Association, continuity may mean maintaining a ritual line and designating someone to represent it. For a biological genealogist, the focus may be degrees of descent from Gojong or another monarch. For constitutional law, neither calculation creates a privileged office. For the public, a descendant may simply be a human link to a dramatic period. The descendants' professions reveal another truth. Adaptation often matters more than restoration. Yiku's architecture, Yi Hae-won's corporate experience and ceremonial service, and Yi Seok's cultural advocacy show different attempts to make inherited identity useful in a world that no longer requires royal governance. Their disagreements should not be inflated into a battle for control of Korea. Nor should they be dismissed as meaningless theater. Questions of who performs ancestral rites or represents a historic house can matter deeply to families and cultural organizations. The task of documentary history is to recognize that meaning while defining its legal boundaries. So where are the living descendants of Joseon today? They are in South Korea and across a wider diaspora. Some appear at ceremonies or speak publicly. Many live privately. One prominent association recognizes Yi Hae-won as a ceremonial successor, while alternative claims and interpretations have existed. None holds constitutional royal power. The final lesson is that dynasties rarely vanish in a single moment. Their governments can fall while their families continue. Their property can become public heritage while their rituals survive. Their succession can become contested while their cultural influence grows. Joseon no longer rules Korea, but its descendants and institutions still show how history remains present without becoming government again. The search for Korea's last heir begins with a tempting mystery and ends with a more valuable answer. Yiku's death closed the senior direct biological line through Crown Prince Yi-un, but it did not erase the house of Yi. Yi Hae-won was selected by a major family association to continue a ceremonial line. Yi Seok advanced a different interpretation. Yi Hae-won made a competing claim during her lifetime, and numerous other descendants remained outside the dispute. Their story is not about a crown secretly waiting to be reclaimed. It is about how people carry history after the legal world that defined their ancestors has disappeared. In modern Korea, the dynasty survives through descendants, genealogies, royal tombs, palaces, scholarship, and the annual Jongmyo ritual. Its legacy belongs not only to one family, but also to the public that preserves, questions, and reinterprets it. If you enjoy carefully researched documentaries that separate royal legend from documented history, subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments, which former dynasty should we investigate next, and from which city or country are you watching?